Welcome to a very special nighttime and slightly crooked edition of Watch Me Drive, where I talk and you listen. Trump is literally Hitler. Trump is literally Hitler. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've heard that a lot. Trump is literally Hitler. And I want everyone to take a deep breath and relax and calm down for 2 seconds, because I'm going to unpack this in a very blue-collar, Midwest sort of way. This is not going to be a huge history lesson, but you need a little bit of a history lesson and a little blue-collar perspective on this whole issue to put it into perspective. So let's break this down. Because before 2015, I didn't know jack shit about Nazi Germany. I just knew about the Holocaust and that Nazis were bad and that the Allies won World War II. And I knew about D-Day, and I knew about the Berlin Wall, and I knew like the token, pertinent historical facts, but I didn't really understand what was going on in that time to the degree that I do now. And by no means am I a historian, but I know a lot more about it now than I did then. And from that understanding, I'm going to give you guys some perspective. So when I first heard this Trump-Hitler comparison, I said to myself, man, there's no way a serious presidential candidate in the United States of America is literally Hitler. But maybe there's some disturbing similarities that are drawing the attention of some of the educated folk, and I need to pay attention. So I did my research, and this began with researching Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler. And immediately I can see everyone's eyebrows going up saying, oh my gosh, she read about Adolf Hitler. And it's like, well, you spent the last 6 months comparing this candidate Trump to Hitler, and I want to see if you guys are onto something, so I got to learn about Hitler to see if you guys are telling the truth. Now, I'm not saying I went up and read Mein Kampf or anything, but I did some research. And my first question was, if the Nazis were so evil and so deplorable, which they certainly were, how did they gain popularity in Germany? How did this happen? Was it just a little military thing, or was it the actual German people? Like, these are questions that needed to be asked. Because if this comparison between Trump and Hitler were ringing true, we need to first just start by understanding how the hell Nazi Germany got the way it was, right? So, long story short, is one of the bigger explanations for how Nazi Germany got the way it was is that the German citizens were economically disenfranchised. And what Adolf Hitler very successfully did is he catered to their fear and desire to succeed and their need for pride. All of those things came together into a cocktail which produced evil. So let's break down how it happened. After World War I, and then the Great Depression about 10 years after that, Germany was devastated economically. Between losing the war, the Treaty of Versailles, during the 20s, the United States was loaning Germany money. They had some little terms and agreements going on. And then when the United States started collapsing, Germany was hit harder. So by the early 1930s, the German people were suffering and disenfranchised. And this just goes for the average German citizen. Like, it wasn't great to be in Germany during the early 1930s. And this type of environment, this desperation and this fear, you know, when you put people through some shit, they get pretty primitive. That's pretty understandable. So a leader like Hitler could exploit that very effectively. He goes, all right, we're going to first say that you should have pride in your culture, be proud to be German, which in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with that. Have some pride in yourself. Okay, perfectly fine. But having this pride in yourself at the expense of other people, the ego and the hierarchy that develops from, okay, we're ethnic Germans, therefore we're better than everyone else. Whoa, 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 whoa. You could have stopped at just having pride. You didn't need to go to condemning and try to elevate yourself. But that's a very natural thing to do when you feel like you're desperate and disenfranchised, as you look for that opportunity to one-up someone. That's psychological. And you can see how the Nazi propaganda played into that. Is it goes, all right, you know, you've been disenfranchised, you feel like the German culture has been shit on by the rest of Europe for this long, let's give the people some pride. Okay, let's expand the size of the government and encourage people to work harder and use that pride and culture as a driving force to build up their society. Once again, it worked pretty effectively, and in and of itself, it wouldn't have been a bad thing. But here's where it starts getting evil, is this fear and this anger needed a collective target. Otherwise, it could just go in any direction and be incredibly dangerous. And that's where the anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish propaganda came in, because the German people needed an enemy. And with how similar socialism and communism are, the enemy is really just where the wealth is held. In communism and Marxist theory, it's like attack the rich, kill the rich, right? With the Nazi twist, they kind of noticed that, okay, Jewish people might have like inordinate financial influence, let's say. Like per capita, Jewish people seem to have more money. Now, and this might just be just a completely neutral sort of fact, but what Hitler did is he looked at that fact and made a conspiracy out of it, and thus sort of created the enemy of the Jew. And doubled down on that propaganda, and when, you know, he got control, he got appointed the chancellor, and then he just took over basically, and had his minister of propaganda. He had control over the media and the narrative, and the anti-Jewish propaganda was out there big time. Now you got to remember, this is before TV stations and widespread journalism and the internet, so it's a lot easier in that time to perhaps dominate the narrative. And that's what you saw happen in Germany. Is imagine being just an average German citizen, and the only access to the news you get is listening to the radio for 15 to 20 minutes a day, and the only thing you get to hear is straight up Nazi propaganda. Year after year after year of that penetrating into the culture, you can create a racial hatred and prejudice that really shouldn't be there, and it's incredibly destructive, and we saw the evil that manifested. But all of that then begs the question, is this happening in the United States of America, and is Donald Trump responsible for it? Because we just did this sort of like brief little breakdown of Nazi Germany and how it got the way it was, and then, you know, once Hitler started gaining power, you know, and building up the military, he decides, okay, we're going to start annexing previous ethnic German territory. He starts pissing off the foreign allied nations, finally invades Poland, gets and shit hits the fan. We know the history from there. Is anything in the United States of America similar to Germany in the late 1920s and early 1930s? That's the question. And the answer is no. There are some very token surface similarities between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler that will alarm only the most frail snowflake-minded. And let's just break this down, because in Donald Trump's message, there is a lot of strong patriotism, American pride, American exclusivity. And this comparison is drawn between that and the ethnic German culture. But there's one very big difference in Trump's message when he talks about the wall and immigration, is he says, if you come here legally, we want everyone from every culture. If you come here legally. I never remembered Hitler saying that. Unless it was like early on, he was BSing, and if you're a historian, come correct me, I'll take it. I love to learn. But I didn't hear that. Our concern is this undocumented immigration. So it's like, if you only look at Trump on the very surface narrative, it's easy to draw this comparison, but the minute you start zooming into it, you realize, no, there's nothing in common here. I mean, let's take the United States of America, economically speaking. I don't think we're in some dire correction where unemployment's skyrocketing out of control, and come on, bro, let's get going here. And unemployment's out of control, and there's breadlines forming, and there's this huge desperation among the people. I mean, yes, there are poor people in this country. Yes, there are people who are suffering, but in no way are we suffering collectively to anywhere near the degree that was seen in Germany in the early 1930s. So there's not this collective disenfranchised of the environment, and there's not this collective cesspool where this fear-mongering can fester. In fact, the only place where you see fear-mongering work is usually the lower and socially economically disenfranchised demographics, whether it be on the left or on the right. So yeah, with the bonehead conservative Trump supporter, you can scare him by talking about Mexican immigrants. We got to get those Mexicans out of here. They're going to come on in here and take all our jobs. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen? There's a few of those people out here in this country, but in no way do they constitute a majority, let me tell you what. And for every one of those dumbass conservatives, there's a hysterical leftist who wants to enact the Green New Deal because they think our entire system is so bad that it needs to be completely torn down in favor of a climate ideological bunch of nonsense that would guaranteed destroy the American economy. There are radical dumbasses on both sides. That's where fear-mongering works. But the radical left actually has more in common with Adolf Hitler than Donald Trump. You start unpacking the Bernie Sanders policies, the big increase in government size, this Green New Deal, the federal programs, the nationalization of business, that's what Hitler did. That's what Stalin did. That's some European collectivist nonsense that has no place in the United States of America. But then you see the fear-mongering about climate change. All right, climate change is now just the Jews, okay? We have this hysterical thing that we have to solve and we have to get rid of it sooner or we're all gonna die, right? Hitler said to the German people, listen guys, if we don't get rid of the Jews, we're all gonna die, we're all gonna get taken over and yada 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 in a decade. Well, give the people something to be afraid of and give them a timetable of dire consequence. Watch them get hysterical, watch them lose perspective, and watch them thrust you into power. Same fucking formula. But the racism that comes out of the left, this intersectional progressive left, is directed at who's at the top of the hierarchy according to their intersectional politics. That's the cisgendered white male. If you're a white male, they hate you, doesn't matter why. That is the point of hatred because they see you as the privilege. So it's not as much hatred as it is jealousy and envy from their perspective when they apply their lens to society. But it's this perverse lens corrupted by Marxism that sees everyone as different classes and has no respect for the fact that we're all human beings in this battle we call life together, our existence, or whatever you want to call it. Get on some woke spiritual shit right now. But I don't see Donald Trump calling for any of that big nationalization of industry, government. He does a little fear-mongering, what politician doesn't. He's full of it from time to time, what politician isn't. But Donald Trump's calls for patriotism in no way reflect the conditions of Nazi Germany. And quite frankly, those who make that comparison sound like fools.